She stood there in her wedding dress, hand trembling on the doorknob, listening to sounds that made her blood run cold. Just 30 minutes ago, Amara Johnson had been laughing with her bridesmaids, fixing her lipstick one last time, believing she was about to start the happiest chapter of her life. But now, standing in this hallway while 200 guests celebrated downstairs, she heard something coming from inside the bridal suite that would shatter everything she thought she knew about love, family, and trust. Her heart pounded so violently she could hear it in her ears. Part of her wanted to walk away, to pretend she never came upstairs, to go back to the party and live in blissful ignorance. But her hand was already turning the handle, and what she saw when that door opened would not only destroy her marriage before it even began, it would unravel a family secret that had been carefully buried for 29 years. A secret so devastating, so unthinkable, that when the truth finally came out, it would leave everyone asking one question. How many people knew? And why did no one speak up? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. How does a wedding that took 8 months to plan fall apart in 8 seconds? Why would a man who spent 2 years convincing a woman to marry him betray her on the night they exchanged vows? And what kind of secret could a mother keep from her daughter for nearly 3 decades, watching her plan a future that was built on lies? To understand what happened in that bridal suite, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when Amara first met Marcus. Back to when her mother first realized what was happening and made the choice to stay silent. And back to the moment Auntie Vanessa walked into their lives and changed everything. Amara Johnson grew up in a modest neighborhood on the south side of Detroit. Her father left when she was 6 years old, and she never heard from him again. It was just her and her mother, Patricia, living in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. Patricia worked double shifts as a school cafeteria manager to keep them afloat. She taught Amara to be strong, independent, and careful about who she trusted. Trust was earned, not given, Patricia would say. And for most of Amara's life, that advice served her well. She graduated high school with honors, put herself through community college, and became a registered nurse at Henry Ford Hospital. She was the kind of woman who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. Her coworkers loved her. Her patients trusted her, and her mother was proud. But there was one thing Patricia wanted more than anything else for her daughter: a good man. Not a rich man, not a flashy man, just someone solid, someone who would stay. And when Amara met Marcus Whitfield at a hospital fundraiser 3 years ago, Patricia thought her prayers had been answered. Marcus was everything Amara had been looking for. He was 34, worked in corporate sales, dressed well, spoke well, and had this effortless charm that made everyone around him feel seen. He wasn't the type to play games. Within 3 months, he told Amara he loved her. Within 6 months, he was spending weekends at her apartment, cooking breakfast, meeting her mother, talking about the future like it was already decided. Patricia liked him immediately. He called her Miss Patricia, brought her flowers on Mother's Day, fixed the leaky faucet in her kitchen without being asked. He was respectful, thoughtful, the kind of man who opened doors and remembered birthdays. And when he proposed to Amara under the streetlights outside her favorite diner, down on one knee with a simple gold band, Patricia cried tears of joy. Finally, her daughter would have the life she deserved. Or so she thought. Around the same time Marcus proposed, Auntie Vanessa came back into their lives. Vanessa was Patricia's younger sister, the one who had moved to Atlanta 15 years ago and only visited on holidays. She was different from Patricia in almost every way. Where Patricia was cautious and reserved, Vanessa was bold and magnetic. She wore designer clothes, drove a sleek black Mercedes, and always seemed to know someone important wherever she went. No one in the family really knew what Vanessa did for a living. She said she worked in real estate, but the details were always vague. What wasn't vague was her presence. When Vanessa walked into a room, people noticed. And when she offered to help plan Amara's wedding, Patricia hesitated but eventually agreed. Vanessa had connections. She knew vendors, venues, photographers. She could get discounts that Patricia couldn't afford on her own. So Vanessa took charge. She picked the flowers. She negotiated with the caterer. She even helped Amara choose her dress. And through it all, she spent more and more time around Marcus. At first, Patricia didn't think much of it. Vanessa was helping. That's what family does. But there were moments, small moments, that made Patricia uncomfortable. The way Vanessa laughed a little too hard at Marcus's jokes. The way she touched his shoulder when she spoke to him. The way Marcus's eyes lingered on her just a second too long. Patricia told herself she was being paranoid. Vanessa was her sister. Marcus was Amara's fiancé. There was nothing to worry about. But deep down, in a place she refused to acknowledge, Patricia felt something she couldn't name. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was fear. A cold, quiet fear that whispered, something is wrong here. And no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, that feeling the wedding day arrived on a warm Saturday in October. The venue was a historic mansion on the outskirts of Detroit, with white columns and sprawling gardens. 200 guests filled the ceremony space. Amara wore an ivory gown with lace sleeves and a cathedral-length veil. She looked like a dream. Marcus stood at the altar in a tailored navy suit, his eyes glistening as she walked down the aisle. They exchanged vows. They kissed. Everyone clapped. The photographer captured every moment. It was perfect, almost too perfect. But as the reception began, Amara started to notice things. Small things. Marcus kept stepping outside to take phone calls. Vanessa disappeared for long stretches without explanation. And every time Amara looked for her mother, Patricia was staring at Marcus and Vanessa with an expression Amara had never seen before. It wasn't happiness. It was dread. Around 9 o'clock, after the cake was cut and the first dance was over, Amara realized she had left her bouquet upstairs in the bridal suite. It was sentimental, her something borrowed from her late grandmother, and she wanted to preserve it. So she slipped away from the reception, walked through the empty hallways of the mansion, and climbed the stairs to the second floor. The bridal suite was at the end of a long corridor. The lights were dim. The music from downstairs was muffled, and as Amara approached the door, she heard something that made her stop in her tracks. A sound, soft at first, then louder. A woman's voice, breathless, familiar, and then a man's voice. Low, urgent, also familiar. Her heart dropped into her stomach. No, it couldn't be. She stepped closer. The sounds grew clearer. There was no mistaking it now. Her hand reached for the doorknob. It was unlocked. She pushed it open, and there they were. Marcus, on his knees. Vanessa, on the bed. Their eyes turned toward her at the exact same moment. Time stopped. No one moved. No one breathed. For 3 full seconds, the world was silent. And then Amara screamed. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of pure, soul-crushing devastation. The kind of scream that comes from a place so deep inside you that you didn't even know it existed. Vanessa scrambled off the bed, grabbing at her dress, her face pale with panic. Marcus stood up, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Amara backed out of the room, shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't hear anything, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. She turned and ran. She stumbled down the hallway, her veil catching on a doorframe, nearly tripping over her own dress. She didn't know where she was going. She just needed to get away. She burst through a side door and collapsed onto a stone bench in the garden. Her entire body shook. She gasped for air, clutching her chest, feeling like her heart was being ripped apart from the inside. And then she heard footsteps behind her. It was her mother. Patricia's face was ashen. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Amara looked up at her, eyes red and swollen, and said 3 words that changed everything. You knew, didn't you? Patricia's silence was the only answer Amara needed. If your heart is beating fast already, comment. I'm still watching. Let's see who's following this story till the end. Never went away. Amara sat there on that cold stone bench, staring at her mother, waiting for her to deny it. Waiting for her to say no? Of course not. How could you think such a thing? But Patricia didn't deny it. She didn't say anything. She just stood there with her hands clasped together, looking down at the ground like a child who had been caught in a lie. And that's when Amara knew. Her mother had known. Maybe not everything. Maybe not the full extent. But she had known something was wrong, and she had said nothing. Amara's voice came out shaky but firm. How long? Patricia closed her eyes. Amara, please. Not here. Not now. But Amara wasn't going to let it go. How long have you known? Patricia finally looked at her, and for the first time in Amara's life, she saw her mother not as the strong, unshakable woman who raised her, but as someone weak. Someone scared. I didn't know for sure, Patricia whispered. I suspected, but I didn't know. That wasn't good enough. Amara stood up, her dress dragging in the dirt. Suspected what? That my fiancé and your sister were sleeping together? And you just let me marry him anyway. Patricia's face crumpled. I thought I was wrong. I thought I was being paranoid. I didn't want to ruin your happiness over a feeling. But feelings, Amara realized, are often the truest things we have. And her mother had ignored hers to keep the peace, to avoid confrontation, to protect a version of the family that didn't actually exist. Amara shook her head, backing away from her mother like she was a stranger. You let me walk down that aisle. You watched me say vows to him. You stood there and smiled while I made the biggest mistake of my life, and you said nothing. Patricia reached for her, but Amara pulled back. Don't touch me. The words hung in the air like a curse. And then, from behind them, a voice. It was Vanessa. She was standing in the doorway, her dress half-zipped, her makeup smudged. Amara, please. Let me explain. Amara turned to her, and the look on her face was so cold, so empty, that Vanessa actually took a step back. Explain? Amara's voice was quiet now, deadly quiet. Explain what, exactly? Explain how you slept with my husband on my wedding night. Or explain why you've been doing it for God knows how long. Vanessa's lip trembled. It's not what you think. Amara laughed. It was a hollow, bitter sound. Then what is it, Auntie? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think it is. Vanessa opened her mouth to speak, but Patricia cut her off. Vanessa, don't. But Vanessa didn't stop. She looked at Patricia, then back at Amara, and said the words that would shatter everything. He's my son. The world went silent. Amara blinked. Once. Twice. What? Vanessa's voice was shaking now. Marcus. He's my son. I gave him up 29 years ago. I was 17. I couldn't keep him. And 8 years ago, he found me. We reconnected. And I know how it looks. I know it's wrong. But he's not just some man to me. He's my child. And I couldn't stay away from him. Amara felt like the ground had opened up beneath her. Her mind raced, trying to process what she was hearing. Marcus was Vanessa's son. Her biological son. Which meant Amara's stomach turned. Which meant everything she thought she knew about him, about their relationship, about her family, was a lie. She looked at her mother. You knew this too? Patricia's silence was damning. Amara's voice rose. You knew he was her son, and you still let me marry him? Patricia finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I found out a year ago. Vanessa told me. She begged me not to say anything. She said it wasn't like that between them. She said it was just emotional support, that she was trying to make up for lost time. I wanted to believe her. But belief, Amara realized, was not the same as truth. And the truth was this. Her mother had chosen to protect Vanessa over protecting her. She had chosen to keep a secret that should never have been kept. And now, standing here in her wedding dress, Amara understood that the betrayal wasn't just Marcus. It was her entire family. Amara didn't go back inside. She couldn't. She walked out of that garden, through the front gates of the mansion, and kept walking until her feet ached and her dress was covered in mud. She ended up at a bus stop 3 miles away, sitting on a bench in her wedding gown, mascara streaked down her face, looking like something out of a tragedy. A stranger offered her a ride. She declined. She just sat there, numb, staring at nothing. Eventually, her cousin Tasha found her. Tasha didn't ask questions. She just wrapped a blanket around Amara's shoulders, helped her into the car, and drove her to Tasha's apartment. For 3 days, Amara didn't speak. She didn't eat. She didn't cry. She just lay in Tasha's guest room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. How long had it been going on? How many times had Marcus lied to her face? How many family dinners had she sat through, smiling at Vanessa, completely unaware? And her mother, her own mother, had known and said nothing. The betrayal was suffocating. On the 4th day, Amara finally called her mother. Patricia answered on the first ring. Amara, thank God. Please, let me come see you. But Amara didn't want to see her. She just wanted answers. Was it physical? Between Marcus and Vanessa? Patricia hesitated. I don't know for sure. Vanessa swore it wasn't. But after what you saw, her voice trailed off. Amara closed her eyes. Why didn't you tell me the truth when you first found out? Patricia's voice broke. Because I was scared. I was scared of losing you. I was scared of tearing the family apart. I thought if I just kept quiet, maybe it would go away. Maybe it would resolve itself. I thought I was protecting you. But protection Amara realized, was just another word for control. Her mother had decided what Amara deserved to know and what she didn't. And in doing so, she had stolen Amara's right to make her own choices. "You didn't protect me, Mom," Amara said quietly. "You let me walk into a trap." Over the next few weeks, the full story came out. Marcus admitted everything. He and Vanessa had reconnected 8 years ago through a DNA registry website. At first, it was innocent. They met for coffee, talked about the past. Vanessa explained why she gave him up, how she was just a teenager with no support, how she thought about him every day. Marcus had been angry at first, but eventually, he forgave her. And somewhere along the way, their relationship became unhealthy, codependent, obsessive. He said it was never sexual until a year ago. He said he tried to stop. He said he was ashamed. But shame doesn't erase action, and intent doesn't erase harm. Amara listened to all of it, stone-faced, and then told him to leave. She filed for an annulment. The marriage was never consummated. It was over before it began. Marcus didn't fight it. Vanessa disappeared. She moved back to Atlanta, changed her phone number, and cut off contact with the entire family. Patricia tried to reach her, but Vanessa never responded. And Patricia was left alone with her guilt. Amara didn't speak to her mother for 6 months. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was out of necessity. She needed space. She needed time to rebuild herself without the weight of her mother's expectations, her mother's secrets, her mother's need to be forgiven. During that time, Amara started therapy. She joined a support group for people who had experienced familial betrayal. She learned that what happened to her wasn't just a bad breakup. It was trauma. It was a violation of trust at the deepest level, and it would take time to heal. She also reconnected with her father's side of the family for the first time in 20 years. Her paternal aunt reached out after hearing what happened, and slowly, cautiously, Amara let her in. It turned out her father had passed away 5 years ago, but his siblings were still around, and they welcomed her with open arms. For the first time in her life, Amara felt like she belonged somewhere. Not because of what she could give, but because of who she was. A year after the wedding, Amara moved into a new apartment across town. It was small but bright, with big windows that let in the morning sun. She repainted the walls herself, a soft shade of yellow that reminded her of hope. She adopted a cat, a scrappy little tabby she named Freya. She started taking salsa classes on Thursday nights. She traveled to New Orleans by herself and spent a weekend eating beignets and listening to jazz. She was rebuilding, slowly, carefully, and for the first time in a long time, she was doing it for herself. Not for her mother, not for a man, not for anyone's approval, just for her. One evening, Patricia showed up at her door. Amara hadn't invited her, but she wasn't surprised. She let her in. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, 2 cups of tea between them, the silence heavy but not hostile. Patricia spoke first. "I'm sorry." Amara nodded. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me," Patricia continued. "But I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Amara looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw someone who was just as broken as she was. "You weren't doing the right thing, Mom. You were doing the easy thing. And there's a difference." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "I know that now." Amara took a sip of her tea. "I'm not ready to go back to how things were. I don't know if I ever will be. But I'm willing to try." Slowly, Patricia nodded, wiping her eyes. "That's all I can ask." They didn't hug. They didn't make promises. But they sat together for an hour, talking about small things. The weather. Amara's new apartment. Patricia's new job. It wasn't healing, not yet. But it was a start. And sometimes, a start is enough. Over the next year, Amara continued to rebuild her relationship with her mother. It wasn't the same. It would never be the same. But it was real. It was honest. And that mattered more than perfection. As for Marcus and Vanessa, Amara never heard from them again. She didn't want to. She had spent too much time thinking about what they did to her. Now, she was focused on what she could do for herself. And what she learned was this. Betrayal doesn't define you unless you let it. It can break you. It can change you. But it doesn't have to destroy you. One day, Amara was working her shift at the hospital when she ran into an old friend from nursing school. His name was Jordan. He was kind, thoughtful, and had always made her laugh. They grabbed coffee after work, then dinner the next week, then a movie. Amara wasn't looking for love. She wasn't even sure she believed in it anymore. But Jordan was patient. He didn't rush her. He didn't demand anything. He just showed up, consistently, with no games and no hidden agendas. And slowly, carefully, Amara let herself trust again, not because she forgot what happened, but because she learned that one person's betrayal doesn't mean everyone will betray you. And the best way to honor your pain is not to let it stop you from living. Amara's story didn't have a fairy tale ending, but it had something better. It had truth. It had growth. It had resilience. And in the end, that was enough.